James Carman is our guest. James grew up on a ranch in Texas. He specialized in raising hogs and baling hay. After reading many books, he left the countryside to study creative writing and electronic music. Upon his graduation, he picked up his knapsack and decided to see the world. He moved to Berlin in 1986 and worked as a photographer. In 1988, he composed a rock opera called The Outsider's Overture. From 1989 to 1993, he studied film production in San Francisco and Berlin. After a decade in Europe, he moved back to New York City, where he works as a cinematographer and a photographer. But he is based in the United States, but works all over the world. In the genre, we talk about his documentary called The Hidden Hand, the movie. There's a couple of websites that James has. Time Traveler. Oh boy, taking 2 days off is not good for me, guys. TimeTravelerArts.com and HiddenHandTheMovie.com are two of his websites. So without any further delay, let's get James on the line. James, good evening. Welcome to K-Talk and the Fringe Radio Show.
Hey, how are you doing? Nice to be with you.
I'm doing great, and thank you for taking some time out of your schedule. I know that you are a very busy individual.
Yes, I am, but it's a pleasure to speak with you.
Well, it's an honor to speak with you, James. Anyway, I just not even scratched the surface on your bio, but boy, you from working on a ranch and going to and moving into film and moving all over the world. Love to hear the backstory a little bit. You've got a very interesting life.
Yeah, well, I was raised in Texas, but I like to travel, and I got the travel bug early, and so then I just started moving around, and I ended up living 11 years in Europe. And then after that, I moved back to New York.
Is filmmaking in other parts of the world, is it different than making films here?
Not really. It's a little different. It depends. The funding is different. There they have a lot more public funding, and here it's much more commercially oriented, and there it's much more socially oriented, also in terms of like what, let's say, the powers that be want their populace to see and be aware of. And here it's much more like, what are we going to be able to sell? What's going to make money? Right. And there it's like, what would be edifying? A lot of times it's that. But, that money is limited over there just because it's all public. And here, we can spend, $500 million, $1 billion on a film, and there that would be impossible. They might have only like $200 million for their whole film budget.
So does the government put some money into some of these? I mean, here it's of course there's grants and stuff like that, but I mean, most filmmakers in the United States, and I don't know if that goes for over there as well. I mean, a lot of them do the Kickstarters, or they go out and they try to find public funding. Is there? It sounds like there's a little bit of government funding over there.
Well, there's tons of government funding. That's how most of it is how it proceeds over there. But the thing is that it's very political, and there's only a certain few people that get a part of the pie, and the rest they have to sell popcorn at the movie theater. So then now people are starting to self-finance a little bit, but it's really not in the mentality. It's really much more of an American thing.
Wow, very, very interesting. Well, one of the reasons I contacted you, James, and of course want to hear about all of your work, but we actually had quite a few listeners write into us and request you to come on the show to talk about your project called The Hidden Hand. How did that all start for you? And maybe you could kind of tell us a little bit about the documentary. Several people have indicated they have seen it. I myself have not. I need to take a look at it. But very interesting topic, to say the least.
Well, I've always been interested in spiritual studies and comparative religion. I've always been interested in the paranormal, and so back in the 90s, when I was still living in Berlin, people weren't that interested in that, and I kind of missed that. And so when I came back to the States, I kind of immersed myself back into that lifestyle and those interests, and I found that there was a lot going on here, and I started working as a producer, producing a healing video, and I met a lot of women at that time that's I could see that they would, during the breaks, they would meet and huddle together, and they would be crying and distraught, and I would hear them talking about being abducted and having pregnancies that were terminated, and having hybrid children, and I thought it was all very bizarre and strange, and I couldn't really relate to it, but it kind of stuck with me because I could see that they were, there was a real trauma that was going on with them. It wasn't anything that was made up, and
right.
That they were seeking healing, and they were trying to find help however they could. And then I started meeting people also that claimed that they had been part of a secret government and been trained as psychics and stuff. And so I started thinking, well, I've got access to some of these people. Why don't I just start interviewing and documenting it and make a film? And it took me quite a few years, but I just kind of kept on with it methodically. I had other work that I was doing, and then I would do that during my spare time, and then eventually the film was finished.
When you were out there putting the film together, when you were doing all of the interviewing, James, I mean, because it is a subject that is very unique. Of course, you're going to have obviously one group of people that are saying, hey, look, there's things going on that there are credible people that are involved with in some way or another, whether they experience or whether they've experienced something, have a little bit of an inside track on something, and then of course there's the other hand, the other side that says, this is nothing but a bunch of craziness and people that need to take medicine or pills. When you were doing all these interviews, did you find that? I mean, did you find a lot of people that were very supportive and people that were maybe quite didn't, thought it was nothing but craziness? And obviously in the film you've had Dr. Edgar Mitchell on and so many other very credible people with credentials that you had the opportunity to interview and get in the film. The research part had to be kind of fun and then maybe even challenging in some ways.
Well, I have, like, Dr. Edgar Mitchell. He was the sixth astronaut on the moon. He has 2 PhDs from MIT. He's a decorated war hero. He's a Navy captain. He's, quite an amazing man. I have Paul Hellyer, who was the defense minister for Canada. He was a deputy prime minister under Trudeau. And, have people like that, and a lot of people in the military, too, coming forward and saying that, this phenomenon is real. Some saying that I would say secret parts of the U.S. government are involved in that, and then there are others that say that, no, there aren't, that it's just a phenomenon that they're aware of, but they really can't do much about it, and they don't know much about. So, but yes, these are all very credible people, and when you have people like that come forward, then you have to listen to them, and then there's quite a bit of documentation, by very high-ranking government officials saying that there is a phenomenon out there, and a lot of people, they don't know exactly what it is, but they say it should be studied, and I think there's a lot of indication that in 1947, there was a crash at Roswell. In 1947, there was also the establishment of the National Security Act and basically the national security state as we know it now. Exactly.
When you talked with these different people, I mean, could anybody give you? Did you find any? And again, I have not had an opportunity to watch the film, but did you have a lot of people? Did any of these people, James, have any proof, any concrete evidence, or was it more experiences, would you say?
Well, I mean, I think some people had proof, like corroboration. Like I would have someone who was the head of what they called the UFO desk at the Ministry of Defense in England. In England, they released some of their UFO files, and so they're talking about certain incidents, and then I would interview the majors, the Air Force pilots that were actually in those incidents. So I think that is some kind of proof, some kind of corroboration. I think that would hold up in a court of law.
Right. Oh, I agree.
So, yeah, there is some of that. And then a lot of it is just what people's experiences are, what they've encountered. And, a lot of the proof is it's been clamped down. The official documents that we have, most of them, they were obtained during the Freedom of Information Act, and that was just a couple years, right, during Carter's reign, where these papers were allowed out, and then when Reagan came in, then it was clamped down, and we couldn't get any more documentation. But just even in those 4 years, there was enough to show that this is really going on.
Well, it I mean, there's just so many things that there are so many things out there that happen, James, and it we've got people like Stephen Bassett, who of course is pushing for disclosure. He did his big conference last year. He's brought a lot of credible people to Washington. It's like it's all there, but it never really officially comes out. And I think that's what so many people are waiting to see. And have one of these government agencies just, come out and make an official statement. It is interesting how they just want to sideline all these different topics. They don't give you a straight answer. They give you that, out on the edge type of answer. And so many people I think are just looking for something positive. They're just looking for confirmation.
Well, I think it's going to be hard. I mean, I think on the one level there is kind of disclosure going on. A lot of the governments in the last 10 years have released documents relating to UFO cases and their UFO files. So you actually see a lot of openness. And on the other hand, in terms of like the secret military, the secret government, I don't think it would behoove them to have this come out, because any kind of military advantage or technological advantage they have could be then people will say, hey, well, we want to have access to that technology. We want to be able to use that. We want to be able to create commercial concerns with that technology, because it should be kind of like the public good, right? Because it's not that one corporation should be able to use any of that technology. It's something that should belong to everyone. And of course, then when you get into energy and anti-gravitics and free energy, or what they call zero-point energy, then it's very threatening to the whole way the global system of finance and power is set up. And so those that are kind of at the reins of that system don't really want that to happen, because then they would lose their power.
Right. That's very true. And even like with the Roswell incident, I mean, it was a very unstable time for the country, and again, of course, the I don't want to say fanatic in me, but a person is I'm not a ufologist by any means. I'm more of a researcher's researcher. I would love to see something come out. I would love to hear something. But then on the other hand, just as you stated, there may be technology out there that they just don't want to release, or it could be used for the good of, well, I don't know. Maybe it could be used for the good of the planet or the good of our country, or if there's some technology out there that it's better that we have it and Russia doesn't have it. I don't know. So you kind of get on the fence, and I go either way. But it is such a it is such an interesting phenomenon. Now, your film, again, I'm a little disadvantaged, James, because I haven't seen it yet. I'm going to watch it hopefully in the next week or two. I want to sit down and when I have a little bit of time. Does the film kind of just present a lot of different cases? Does it come up with any conclusions, or is it just laying out the facts?
Well, I think my objective was to present the phenomenon in kind of like an overview of the phenomenon, and not to say this is the way it is, but this is kind of what is purported, and it's showing different aspects of it, from it being there to there being abductions, to there being sexual experimentation, there being hybridization program, and there being a very deep program within the what I call the secret government to study bodies and ET technology, and for the reverse engineering of that technology. So I kind of bring all of this stuff out into the open and talk about it, and then I say, but really, it's called the hidden hand, and that's kind of, it relates back to Adam Smith. He tells about in capitalism, there's a hidden hand in the market forces that rule the markets, and it's kind of almost like a supernatural idea, and it's kind of interesting to have, like, capitalism is definitely not supernatural, but as he was talking about it, he mentioned that, and then nowadays it's used more in terms of that are manipulating the course of human events from behind the scenes. And so in my film, you would have two hidden hands. You would have the ETs and you would have the secret government, and none of them are forthcoming. No one's forthcoming. So at the conclusion I draw then is we don't really know for sure exactly, what's going on, but we do know that there's something going on because you have all these people talking about it. A lot of them very credible. A lot of them in the military, and you have like a plethora of UFO photographs. You have a plethora of UFO video footage. I mean, there's just in the United States alone, there's over 13,000 UFO sightings a year. That's a couple a day.
Right.
So yeah, I think it's safe to say that something's going on.
Well, and even with the abductions, there's a lot of people that want to debunk it or say it's nothing but a hoax. And I think in some cases it can be a hoax. I've done a lot of reading about abduction scenarios. Sometimes I think maybe some people feel they're being abducted. It could be sleep paralysis. There's a lot of different things, but yet there are still millions of people that have come forth and forward, and they're not all crazy. Something has happened to them. Obviously, they can't put their finger on exactly what it is. Some can. Most seem not to. They just know that something happened. There was a loss of time, or maybe even not a loss of time is the right word, but a loss of memory. Something is going on in one way, shape, or form. One of our listeners sent in a question for you, James. Says, James,
Sure.
What do you think? What does James think the alien agenda is, and will there be disclosure in the next 5 to 10 years? I think you talked a little bit about the disclosure, but do you think there is an agenda going on that is not of this world?
Well, I definitely think there's an agenda, and the thing is I think you can't really talk about the alien agenda because I think there's different species or varieties that are visiting Earth, and some seem to be more spiritually evolved and concerned about our spiritual evolution, concerned about that we survived this period. A lot of ETs come, and they've started coming after World War II, and you see them a lot of times monitoring our military bases, our nuclear reactors, so they seemed very concerned about nuclear. I think there is a concern on their part that we don't blow up this planet. And then on the other hand, you see the ETs, that there is a hybridization program so that they are creating a hybrid race, and we don't know exactly for, maybe either to supplant us or to bring to other worlds to colonize, or perhaps their race is dying out because they've cloned themselves so much that they've become genetically reduced in their gene pool, and so there's a degradation of their own genetics, and so they decided just to make a hybrid race from themselves.
Very interesting. Well, and as far as, do you, with all the interviews that you did, James, do you feel that there is, or there has been over the years, there has been interactions between alien, not of this world, individuals and of this world? Do you believe that there has been relationships, or at least meetings, or at least contact, in some official kind of way?
Well, that's kind of a hard question, because I think really the relationship goes way, way back to our origins. And if you study history, a lot of people, they study like ancient history, and there's indications that there was interaction, throughout all of humanity. And there's a lot of indications that perhaps we were created from a hominid species that walked here with an ET species that came here. So if that's the case, then there's always been some kind of interface between, like, the priest king who would carry out the plans and the wishes of the gods or the ETs. And I think here nowadays there is definitely interaction. I mean, I know Lynn Buchanan, he's an intelligence, Army intelligence expert. He's also a remote viewer. He was at Fort Meade, which is part of the NSA, and he was part of their remote viewing program, and he teaches remote viewing to a lot of different people as a school. But he did have interaction with ET when he was in the military, and he knows about this program for technology exchange and reverse engineering. So, you have someone like Ingo Swann who also talked about that. He was it was his job to remote view different ETs, and he did it very, very secretly and very gingerly, because he said that they were very aware and he didn't want them to know that he was looking at them.
Right, they could get a sense of it coming the other direction, if you will.
Yeah, and then as soon as if they got a lead on him, then they could just always follow him and always know what was up with him, and he didn't want that.
Interesting, very, very interesting. Have you had a fascination with ufology and all this for a long, long time?
Not really. Since the late '90s, which I guess is a fairly long time, but I was never interested in it as a child or as a teenager. But I was interested in space. Always very interested in the Apollo program and the space station program. Even in the '60s, I was very interested in the space station program, and would love to see how that develops. And it seems like there's a lot going on now, just because there's so much private corporations going out into space, and because it's now becoming feasible in terms of making profit. That I think it's amazing. I don't know if you followed it, but there was a Dutch company that wants to start a colony on the Mars, and they asked for, and it's a one-way trip. It's not, right. You can't come back, and because your bones and your muscles degrade so much with the flight and also with the lower gravity on Mars that they just said, who wants to come to Mars and start a colony? And 200,000 people all over the world said that they wanted to participate, and 50,000 from the United States.
Are you talking about the Mars One project?
Yeah.
Yeah, very, very, very interesting. Matter of fact, the second hour, I know we've got you for an hour. The second hour, we have a NASA engineer. Sarah Howard, worked with NASA and the Saturn project. If you get time, take a listen, and that's what we're going to be talking about for the second segment. I do find it interesting. I've had different professors on the show. A couple people that have worked closely with JPL and even some past NASA people, and it is, while I think there's money, I mean, obviously they're trying to capitalize on this space industry. It is kind of sad to see that NASA has been so powerful, in launching, putting people into space, and moon landings and the space shuttle program. And once the shuttle program stopped, I mean, everything just about stopped. I know there's this, I believe it's the XB-37 or the SB-37. It's kind of a smaller shuttle-type craft, but NASA was such a powerhouse, James, and such a giant, and kind of kept, I think, at least from an American standpoint, kept us all on the edge of our seats, and it's kind of sad to see that everything has come to a halt, but at least Elon Musk with SpaceX, he's now delivering. I mean, we're using private companies to get to the ISS. I'm kind of glad to see at least there are private companies stepping up that are going to continue man's push to space and to other planets.
Well, I think you also have to think about that there's a secret space program that's going on that's very advanced that is not public, and so I don't think you have to work. I don't think that space is very important. In terms of if you look at the history of mankind, the people who ruled the seas could have the empires.
Right.
The people have the navies. For if you look at the Venetians or the Spanish or the Portuguese or the English, their empires blossomed when their navies were strongest, and in a way, I think it's the same. Like if you want to have control over space, then it's easier for you to have control over, let's say, influence or hegemony over the world. And so I don't think the United States is going to give that up anytime soon.
I surely hope not. I mean, and again, I agree with you. There are a lot of behind-the-scenes projects, but the shuttle was such it was such an amazing feat to be able to build a craft of that size and do what it was able to do. But again, just costed so much money. Hopefully, I believe NASA is in the process, though I could be wrong, about building another heavy lift rocket. I think for I don't know whether for a moon landing or for what they're going to do, but I mean, it is nice to see that there is things happening. It would be great if it was a little bit more in the limelight of the public, because again, I think
I totally agree, because on so many different levels, because for me it was so exciting growing up to be a part of that, and I felt I was a part of it, and I wanted to participate in that, and I think it's important, even though obviously there are national security issues, but to keep us totally blind about anything related to this subject, I think it's not fair, and I think it's not giving us enough credit.
I agree.
I think as citizens of a republic, we should have access to at least know the basic overview of what's going on.
Exactly. Would you like to take a call?
Sure.
Okay. Caller, good evening. Welcome to K-Talk. You're on with James Carman.
Hi. Apollo, when flying on the backside, the dark side of the moon, which we cannot see from Earth, allegedly a couple of things occurred. One, that they saw some structures on the dark side, and two, that there was a transmission in rough English to the effect of "explore no more." Perhaps your guest could comment on those backside of the moon allegations, or are they credible?
Sure. Did you ever hear of that, James?
Okay, what was the message? I didn't hear that.
About exploring no more.
Explore no more. Well, you have to wonder. We spent billions of dollars developing Apollo, and we went there a couple of times, and we were planned to go more, and then we just suddenly stopped. And that was always a mystery to me. It's like, why did we stop? We planned to keep on going, and then all of a sudden we stopped, and there was almost no explanation for it. So perhaps there is something there. A lot of people have researched the moon and said that there are structures on it, and the moon has a lot more to it than what we've been told, that it's basically an empty crater with no atmosphere. It does have some atmosphere, and people, for a long time, even centuries, have been talking that there's water on the moon because they've seen weather anomalies there. So I think there is something to that, but you just had Japan that went all around the moon, and unless they doctored all their footage, you have to also look at that someone was just there.
Go ahead. What was your question, caller?
At the sudden ending of the Apollo, sudden unexpected ending of the Apollo program, after this. Of course, this is the Apollo astronauts are in radio silence in the backside of the moon. They are not receiving any transmissions from Earth whatsoever. And when they got this, allegedly, transmission, "explore no more," that thereafter the United States stopped the manufacturing of the big Saturn V Super Boost missile, and allegedly has destroyed the blueprints and many other things that would allow us to rebuild the big sun. Perhaps your guest could comment on that.
Well, yeah, and we'll ask him, and then listen to the second hour. We're going to have NASA engineer Sarah Howard on, and she's going to be talking about Apollo and the Saturn V specifically. So stay tuned
Do I
for
get to
part
call
2.
back?
Pardon me?
Can I call back?
Sure, you
hours?
can. Yeah, we'll have her. We'll have her here in just a little bit. Anyway, James, you want to comment on that at all?
Well, I think the Saturn V, I mean, that's not like, I think even if the blueprints were destroyed, we know how to build that. I don't think that would be related to ET, as a way to deter us from going to the moon. It seems like now there is a lot more talk about going to the moon, so we'll have to see what happens there. If there is an underground base there on the dark side of the moon, has there been a detente created or what? We'll find out. But China just went there, and it was kind of interesting. The Jade rover was active for like 4 days, and then it stopped. And maybe that was just a technical problem, or maybe someone, could have even been us, said, okay, that's enough. They don't need to find out anymore.
Exactly. Well, again, it is interesting. It is interesting that we did stop going to the moon. It is interesting that while there are some people, of course, the pure scientists will say there's no structures there, there's no nothing there. There are a lot of other photos that have been shown that there is something there, or there could have been something there. Again, even with Mars, there's people that say, the things that people are seeing, the rovers producing, they're nothing more than anomalies, and yet there's other things that appear to be mechanical looking, like there was something there. So it's so interesting, James. The whole phenomenon of these two fairly close places we can get to. We just need to do so much more exploring, but it's going to take it, at least probably in our lifetimes. The exploring I think a lot of us would like to see is not going to happen for quite some time. I mean, it's such a feat just to get there. But at least we keep, as a species, as human beings, we keep pushing. We keep pushing in that direction and keep moving in that direction.
Yeah, I think, and it seems like that things are being revealed very slowly, because now there's water on the moon, there's water on Mars, or they're saying there could be life on Mars, and so I think very, very gradually things are being revealed in stages. It seems like.
Without a doubt. Are you ever going to do a follow-up to Hidden Hand or something very similar to it again in the future?
Yes, I'm working on that now, actually.
Want to talk a little bit about some of your other films and what you've got on the boiler?
Well, I'm doing one that I'm very excited about. It's called Super Conscious. It's about people who have special gifts and abilities. So it's not in the ET realm, but I'm very excited about that. It's about human potential. Also not only in terms of individually, but as a society. And then also there's a lot of material I have that I've kept on collecting about the ufology and things related to ufology that I think it's so good that I just decided I'm going to put out a second film, and I think people will really love to see it.
Oh, without a doubt. Where can people get? Where can they get your film right now? Where can people see this, buy it, rent it?
Okay, well, you go to the website hiddenhandthemovie.com, and under Buy Now, you can either buy DVD from me now, or you can rent the film on Vimeo, or there's iTunes, Amazon, there's Google Play, there's Xbox, Hulu. It's going to come out on Netflix at the end of May. So
wow, very good.
There's many places you can see it.
Yeah, that'll be cool, without a doubt. I mean, that'll be really cool. Like I said, I'm going to see it. I want to watch the film because it is so interesting. It covers so many of the topics we cover. Another question that came in for you, our friend Red over in the UK sent in. He said, James, is there any database or logging of U activity over the Antarctic by some central authority, or pooling of accounts or reports?
Oh, wow, that's a great question. I can say I don't know.
Okay.
I'm sure that there is, though, because, I'm sure in terms of official it's a consortium of governments that work there, and I'm sure amongst themselves they communicate with each other, and then as much of that can be disseminated amongst the public is probably done so. I mean, if you look, it's really interesting. If you look at the Antarctic, there's quite a lot of bases there that people don't talk about. It's quite built up.
Right.
And really, no one really knows what they're doing or what's going on all those places. So it's a fascinating place.
Well, yeah, especially with, I mean, again, it's almost like getting to the moon too. I mean, there's such a short summer, and of course, making arrangements to get there. I don't believe there's anything. I could be wrong. I don't even believe there's any sort of public type places. I mean, it's all controlled by all the different governments of the world. To take a trip there, I think, is somewhat of a feat.
No, you can. There are cruises that go there, but you're in a boat that's with like 40-foot waves. Sometimes it can be a very trying trip, and it costs money. But I think you can. Then it just stops, and you can go off on shore at different places. And that's one trip I really want to make. I'm very excited about Antarctica, and I think it's really beautiful.
It is. My day job, James, I'm an IT person by day, and I actually several years ago put in some paperwork to go down to McMurdo, and what I didn't realize in going through that, to actually work there, to do the kind of work I was looking to do, there are so many different, it's not like you just, find a job, pay the fee, and go. What I found real interesting was you take a series of tests, environmental tests, because the ground down there is while when we see pictures like from McMurdo Base, it looks like it's pretty run down and cruddy and stuff. Simple things like an antifreeze leak in your car, your vehicle, down there can be catastrophic to a lot of the animals. And what I found pretty interesting, to get there, you need to go through quite a few physical examinations to make sure you're not bringing any diseases down, or not going down there with something. It was quite a bit of effort to get stationed to work down there.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm sure it is. But it would be worth it, I think.
Oh, I do too. Yeah. If you like isolation, that's for sure. All the pictures I see, at least in a lot of the photos that I've looked at working down there, it looks like the majority of the hobbies are smoking, drinking, and playing pool is what we seem to see. But it is a beautiful place and so much to explore. It's almost like stepping off on another planet. Another question for you is, it says, James, do you believe that extraterrestrials have souls?
I think some do and some don't. I mean, the whole question of what is an extraterrestrial is very tricky, because I think you have, like us beings that grew up on a different planet, in a different terrain, under different evolutionary circumstances, and then you have what I call interdimensional beings, and then you have beings that are probably more of an artificial intelligence or cloned biological entities. And so I think some would have souls and some wouldn't. And I think that is some of them that don't have souls, that's why they're interested in us, because they want to capture that force, that power, or maybe genetically engineer a vessel or vehicle that could hold a human soul that's closer to them.
Well, that makes sense. It seems like a lot of people report on these the gray aliens, the worker bees. A lot of reading and different things that I've looked into seem to indicate that these beings are kind of soulless. They're more mechanical than anything else. They're the worker bee. Mm-hmm. And then others.
Yeah, it seems like the small ones are. But I don't think the bigger ones are. But we don't really know. I mean, it's so easy to speculate. But there's been publicly, there's been so little scientific work that's been done. So, we can speculate all we want, but it's difficult unless we have more concrete information.
Oh, I totally agree. Another question for you is, this is James. You make so much sense to me. Have you ever seen a UFO?
Yes, I have. There's two friends of mine. One is Antonio Orsi. He's from Milan. And basically wherever he goes in the world, he sees and records UFOs. It's uncanny, but he has a connection to them, and he can feel them. And he'll say, okay, today at 4:30, and then we'll be out and about and during our day. And then at 4:30, he'll just stop, pull out his camera, and start filming in the sky. And then you kind of look and see, what is he doing? And then you see, well, way up there, there's two things, and he just knew they were up there. And he had a feeling in his stomach that they were there. And then I have another friend of mine, Mark Brinkerhoff, who also has a similar ability. And we would have like an outdoor barbecue, and he would come over and say, "Look up there." And then there would be like 3 ships hovering in the sky, and they would stay there for half an hour and then be off. So, yeah, I've seen them.
Yeah. Very, very interesting. I've seen 2 in my life, and like I've told people that I've encountered, when I told about my descriptions of them, and what I saw is, if they are of this world, James, we have got some unbelievable technology. If they are not of this world, well, somebody else has some unbelievable technology, because what these 2 craft were able to do was beyond belief for me.
Right. Well, I think it's both. I think we do have that technology, and I think it did come from somewhere else. The Ben Rich, who was the director of the Lockheed Skunk Works, before he retired, he said that we can take ET home now. So he basically was saying that and then he went up and he said, that we got most of it from UFOs, most of that technology.
Are you a ufologist? I mean, do you still follow it pretty closely, or are you just, again, not just, but you're a filmmaker? Do you feel it's more important to not research it but more to document it?
Well, I could say that I research it, but it's not my main. I work a lot. And it's working full time and making films. It doesn't give me a lot of extra time to research. But I just spoke last week at a UFO conference, and I showed some clips and talked and brought up different sides of the phenomenon. So I think I'm well versed in it. But there are many, many other people that are much more versed than I am. But I think I have a pretty good overview of the subject. But it's very, very vast and deep, the subject. So in no way would I say I'm an expert.
Well, your film, the different people that we have had email us and the different comments that I have heard is it's a extraordinary film, and I want to thank you that you put stuff like this out. I think that it's great that you've made a movie like this, and I think it's also a little bit of a challenge because, again, there are so many people that don't believe. There are so many debunkers and skeptics. I mean, I don't consider myself a skeptic. I am skeptical a little bit. I think that I want to know the truth, and I'm sure you do too, as so many of the listeners do. But there are so many people that just debunk everything, and if it doesn't meet their criteria or their way of thought, they think everybody else is crazy. And I just think that as we're open-minded doing this program and letting people hear about things, I think it's a huge step forward in what you did. And again, my hat's off to you for putting a film like this out and just educating the public. And if people choose to believe, that's fine. If they don't, that's fine too. But at least you give them the opportunity to see it. And that means a lot. Good.
Well, thank you for having me on. I think it's also, public opinion. At first, it's like there's one person, and then who says, "Oh, this is going on," and they say, "Oh, this is the lunatic fringe. This is craziness," and then there's a couple people, and they'll say, "Well, this is some kind of links movement or a left movement," and then at some point, well, then everyone will say, "Well, it's obvious. Everyone knew it all along." So,
right. Right.
maybe that day is upon us soon.
Maybe. James, can you give out your websites for our listeners before we let you go?
Sure. It's hiddenhandthemovie.com, and I have another website called Time Traveler Arts, ARTS.com, where I have some more of my personal work, my photography, and some of the films I've shot.
Well, sounds good. I will let you go. I want to thank you so much for taking the time tonight. I know you're very busy. It was kind of hard to hook up, but thank you for setting the time aside. And when you get your next film done, I would love to have you back on again, and we will take a look at what you've got. I want to see it. I'm going to make it some time to check it out over the next week or two. But again, it was an honor to have you here, and thank you for being here, and thank you for what you do.
Okay, Pat. Thank you for having me.
Okay, James. Have a good night. Take care now.
Bye.
Bye-bye.